There's a certain vibe or vintage to it that just sounds great. Well, let me see. Is that loud?
It's loud. On Taiwan Talk this week, Taiwan's legendary sax musician Corbett Wall talks about his music, what inspired him, and how music in Taiwan developed over the decades.
When you're younger, you want to play, you want to emulate all your heroes and play as fast as you can and do all this kind of stuff. But I realized music's not a race.
No.
Music's storytelling, and so I just like to play songs that sort of people are like, oh, that's a nice song,
You know what I fell in love with was when you sent the clips over for me to listen to. The one that I really fell in love with was the Taiwanese one.
Oh yeah.
When you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know the Taiwanese.
I loved it so much, and I was just thinking you should have released it because it was just so wonderful.
That's there's a story behind that. It was an album I did at a time when Taiwanese music was not yet mainstream here. And the record company said, well, saxophone is a romantic sort of high-class instrument. It's not suitable for this sort of lower... and I was like, what? Music is music. This is a beautiful song. Mm-hmm. But that was the mentality 30 years ago. So that I did the recording, and there's some amazing players on that. And so I met some players from the Carlos Santana band, mm-hmm. and I was in LA. So every time I was doing production for other people, and so every time I'd go back, I'd be like, oh, there's extra couple hours in the studio.
Can we do this?
And we would do this, and that's how the album got put together.
It's a wonderful album. do one of those, and that would, oh my gosh.
So that's a song called 月月虫. And so I heard all these songs. I mean, this is a long time ago. I used to live in Beijing. At night, there's a lot of bustling activity. And they'd have these little mando-pop, right? These little vans that would drive around. And I'd see these musicians throwing like these little mini drums, and they're like a little keyboard and a guitar amp, and they'd like drive somewhere. I was like, what are those guys doing? And they told me, they said they're playing Nakashi music. And I go, what's that? And it was kind of a Japanese, Taiwanese hybrid. And so what they did was they would play these little mini gigs. They would go from tea house to tea house, or like a little hot bath to hot bath, whatever, And I was like, that's fascinating. So I would join them. I was like, where are you guys going? Okay, and we'd go, and I'd hear these songs, and I'd be like, oh, that's cool, So I started asking, what's that song? What's this song? So I learned these songs, and then, I'd go out and buy a bunch of cassettes of these old songs, and I would listen to them, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's a beautiful melody for saxophone. I didn't understand the meaning. And most Taiwanese songs, old Taiwanese songs, are sad.
They are they're lamentations almost. Right?
Oh, yeah, they're like, oh, you left me, I'm forever heartbroken.
most mando-pops like that anyway.
Yeah, it's like, and they're so sad. And a lot of these songs were, written in the 40s, 50s, and life was hard back then. So they're essentially the blues. So I was like, that's cool. I learned something about Taiwan in Berlin. I had no idea. We went there, and the local, the Dashi, Xie Dashi, he's the representative of Taiwan in Berlin. He went out with lunch with us, with our indigenous group. Very, very gracious, wonderful man. And he used to host a TV show because he was the head of the Xinwenji here before. And so we were talking, and he said, oh, I did stuff with music, and we talked about all the blacklisted songs in Taiwan. And I was like, that's interesting. Tell me more. And so he named some songs, and I was like, you're kidding. There's a song called 秀霸掌.
Oh, I love that song.
And I was like, that's blacklisted?
How is it blacklisted?
Because it was like a lower, talking about the hardships of whatever, who knows.
But that was such a wonderful song.
And so, so I'm like, really? So, So it's like a beautiful song. So I kind of created a hip hop version of that. And I, without knowing a lot of the history of the song, just liking the melodies, at that time, the music that influenced me and that I was listening to, a lot of that went into this album. So, there's the blues and there's sort of like R&B and there's all sorts of different stuff. Maybe I'll release it. I don't know.
I think you should. I think you should. I sat there. I'm like, I don't understand why this never came out.
It wasn't the right time. I mean, now I can put it on. I think I got on Sound. I mean, it's releasing music now is a much different.
It's much easier.
It's a different thing. It's
Right.
sort of like anybody can get your music, but why or how would they know about it? The actual thing is not as important as how people find out about it.
Yeah. I
Do
mean,
you see what I mean?
Yeah, I
right?
see what
Yeah.
you're saying. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people, it's like being a writer. I mean, I've seen a lot of people try and self-publish, right? And when I look at some people who self-publish because they can't get a contract or, I kind of think, well, yeah, okay, I get the self-publishing bit, but when you don't have the edits but this is different.
I'll probably do it. Thing is, maybe I can find. I could go back and talk to record companies, but as a expired product, best before 1992, I could still play this thing. Now that I've been back in Taiwan for a few years, I get that, like some literally an obasan will come up to me and she's dragging, two daughters who are dragging their kids and says, "Oh, I loved your music, when I was in junior high school." And I'd be like,
God.
"Wow, okay." But it's
Thank you.
But no, it's really precious.
I can't believe David Sanborn gave you that.
Yeah, I have to thank him. We had the same teacher. There was a point in time where I was back in New York, and I had this opportunity to record other artists there. And I have to thank the record company for believing and trusting in me to do this, because I was a young kid, and they would say, go record so and so's album, and so I would do this. But I would try to find resources so that I can improve myself. And one of the things that was really important to me was the sound. You can always learn technique. I mean, that's like going to the gym or something. It's something, technique is something that you have to work on. But I was trying to figure out, how do you, the sound of the saxophone. And David, I loved his sound. Not that I wanted to sound like him, but the fact that it was so unique. And I found out that his teacher was a very, very accomplished guy named John Purcell, who was he was like a genius. He was he played, flute and clarinet and oboe and saxophones and whatever. But he was a Broadway musician. And I have the utmost respect for these guys, because these guys will be hired to do a show. And they have to have 6 instruments. It's a flute, and then they put it down, they play saxophone, and then there's a clarinet, and then, so
Right.
it's fascinating. And, and I play one instrument. And this guy, and, and not that well. And this guy plays 6 or 8 of them.
And he plays them better than you do.
Yeah, but it was about sound, and it's about the whole physical aspect. It's like a singing teacher. It's about how to get sound and turn it into an emotion. And so, I learned a lot from them.
You were listening to Corbett Wall, and that does it for this week's edition of Taiwan Talk. Thank you for tuning in.